So Chante Griffin is a writer living in Los Angeles. Her work centres the intersection of race, faith and culture. She's written for Ebony, The Root, The Washington Post, Faithfully magazine, and she's a 2019 ARC Emerging Leader Fellow. She's also written a piece on Daily JSTOR titled How Natural Black Hair at Work Became a Civil Rights Issue. Chante, thanks for joining us all the way from the other side of the world.
Thank you. I wish I could be there in person.
Me too. We should do this in person sometime.
Yes.
So, in terms of this piece that you've written titled How Natural Black Hair at Work Became a Civil Rights Issue, can I get you to maybe start with the historical context of the black hair and labour in the United States?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, how much time do we have? 15 minutes? I mean, there are actually books that have been written about it. If you look at the history of black hair in the United States, we're really talking about slavery, and even pre-slavery, honestly, we had a number of freed black folks who were here before anyone ever brought anyone in captivity. But we also had a number, millions of enslaved Africans who came to this land, and they were removed from their land, they were removed from their natural resources, and the tools that they needed to actually care for their hair. And so you have communities of black folks who don't have the things that they need to care for their hair, and they don't have the time to do it. And so in the 1700s, for example, we see enslaved women wearing headscarves because they can't really do much with their hair, and we saw that continuing for centuries in the country. We also saw in the 1700s some enslaved African women actually mimicking the wigs that their enslavers wore, because there was this increasing sentiment that black bodies and black hair were by extension less than and not worthy. So it goes deep. I'll stop there, but those are some of the origins of anti-black hair sentiment in the United States.
And then in what ways did that sentiment become institutionalized in the policing of black hair, beyond, of course, the situation that was slavery? Was there any kind of institutionalization of policing specifically hair of black people?
Absolutely. If you look at a city like New Orleans, around the late 1700s, we had the emergence of the Tignon laws. And these were laws that said that Creole women of color, so these are women who had maybe a mixed or biracial heritage, they were donning these elaborate hairstyles, right? Show-stopping hairstyles, hair like reaching to the sun, right? And beauty and regality. And they were, a lot of them, free women. And what was happening is that they were catching the attention of some white suitors. And so these laws were created to make the women wrap their hair in these tignons, which were pretty much just like headscarves, head wraps, to take away from their beauty, but also to signify that they were less than. So this was something that enslaved women often wore, but these women who were free were being told, no, you must wear your hair like an enslaved woman. So it was a way to keep black women down and to suppress their beauty.
And what's the history of straight hair, chemically straightened or through a hot comb, on black people in the US?
Yes. So if you look the late 1800s, we have the invention of the pressing comb. Actually, it was invented in France or by a French hairdresser in 1872, but there was a black woman named Madame C.J. Walker, and she actually improved upon the very first hot comb and started producing several products that enabled black women to straighten their hair. So here's a black woman offering black women the ability to care for their hair in a new way. But essentially, she was giving black women the opportunity to emulate white Eurocentric standards of beauty. And because black hair was ridiculed so much in our culture, black women did it. And they bought her products and they pressed their hair. And you had these beauty schools that were established throughout the United States, teaching black women how to press their hair, having black women press their hair. And she became the first black woman millionaire selling beauty products. We also have, in 1909, a man by the name of Garrett Augustus Morgan. He was an inventor, and he accidentally invented a relaxer that would take coily, kinky black hair and straighten it. And so by around the 1920s, straightened hair had become in vogue for middle-class black women. It was a sign of success. It was a lot of cases, the social norm for women of that day.
And then I guess fast forward a few decades and this kind of reverses and is tipped on its head. What happens in the 60s?
Well, the 60s, as you know, were very tumultuous for the United States, right? It felt like everyone was protesting and sickening.
Every movement.
So, for lots of reasons. But I think a couple things happened in the 60s. We reached a tipping point. The Vietnam War was one of the reasons. We had Black people protesting for very basic civil rights. But we also had the television, right? And we had people able to look at other Black people and people around the world looking at us and saying, wow, look at these people protesting for basic rights. Look at them being mistreated by the police. Look at the dogs being sicked on them. Look at the fire hoses. And wow, look at these beautiful Black women donning these afros, right? And so we saw, right, for the first time, really Black women starting to embrace this beautiful natural hairstyle, not only as a way of reclaiming their beauty, so to speak, but also a way of saying, like, we refuse to conform to these very narrow definitions of beauty and these very narrow definitions of what is socially acceptable. And television was a huge part of exporting Blackness and Black culture to various cities throughout America, but also to the world at large. So the 60s were pivotal in shifting Black consciousness around hair and beauty. But at the same time, you also saw the 60s, continuing this legacy of Black women having pressed hair or having permed hair or wigs. I think Black women were still trying to figure out who they were, and some women just said, hey, I like pressed hair, right? But we did see this shift, this cultural shift in the 60s and 70s.
I guess the reason why I am asking you all of these kind of questions when it comes to historical context is because, A, it's important when we think about history in the context of the current day, but also because this conversation about hair and Black hair in the United States, but also across the world because of our access to the United States and the ways in which people have migrated around the world and their experience, like Black people's experiences around the world. These are conversations and these are issues that happen now in 2019. And I guess your piece that you wrote on Daily JSTOR, the kind of point that it comes from is these laws in California that have just come out about discrimination when it comes to hair in the workplace. So we've spoken about the 60s, we've spoken about slavery, we've spoken about institutional laws. What's happening now in the United States when it comes to discrimination in the workplace when it comes to natural hair?
Well, this goes back for decades, actually. But one of the most current cases that's hit the news is there was a Black woman named Chastity Jones in 2010. She was offered a job, and she happily accepted. But once she said, yes, I'll take the job, she was told by Human Resources that she needed to cut off her locks. And she refused to cut them off, and so the job offer was rescinded. And so she connected with the EEOC in the United States, and this is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they make sure that everyone is treated fairly in the workforce and that people aren't discriminated against based on race or religion or sexual orientation or anything. And so she filed suit with the EEOC, and they took the case to court, but the court decided that dreadlocks, or locks as they're known now, are not a racial characteristic, and that they are a hairstyle that's immutable, and so she can change her hair if she wants the job, and that employers have the right to make decisions about how their employees wear their hair. And so now what's happening is that you have, some cities, like New York City, saying actually that hair discrimination, it's illegal, but then you have some judges saying actually it's fine because hairstyles are not a racial characteristic.
And what are the implications when it comes to politics and the law and finances when hair is being discriminated against, or Black people's hair specifically is being discriminated against? I think about how racialized hair is and how intertwined people's racial identity and the way that their hair comes out of their head is. How do these things impact the lives of folks across the US, but also across the world?
I mean, that's such an important question, but it's really, really hard to answer, right? Because when you think about it, like when you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, maybe you jump on social media, right? But you do your hair, right? You do your hair before you go out into the world. You do something to it typically. And so for me, I'll just personalize it to answer your question. I cut off all of my pressed hair about 2.5 years ago, and I went natural for the first time in my life, really. And I remember when I cut my hair, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, wow, I feel like myself for the first time. And I was a grown woman. And so it really made me really question kind of how I felt about myself before I cut my hair. And so I think when we talk about, economic or educational consequences of these court decisions, I think we're asking people to cut off parts of who they are so that they can get a job. Right? We're asking people to denounce parts of themselves so that they can be accepted by other people. To say that it's unfair feels like an understatement. It feels inhumane on some levels. It feels like a layer of oppression. I don't think there's a way to monetize or put a number on how much people are suffering because of these court orders.
And in terms of why natural hair is being rejected in this way, what are the reasons that are given? Is it that it's unprofessional, or what are the kind of loaded terms that are used to say that it's not allowed in the workplace?
Yeah, 1 second. One of the reasons, a lot of people do say that natural hair, just in general, isn't professional, that locks aren't professional, and I think it just reveals a personal bias, right? They don't think that hair being twisted in a certain way means that you're educated, or means that you're accomplished, or means that you can conduct business. Of course, the two have nothing to do with one another, but it goes back, I believe, to people's, internalized racism that they don't even realize that they have. And I think that's what we're seeing play out in the courts, that people don't understand how what's been deemed professional is often associated with what is socially acceptable in Eurocentric circles. And so, yeah.
And there is a movement that's been growing over the last, I would say, decade, and maybe because of social media and, our access to YouTube and Facebook and Instagram or whatever, there's this natural hair movement, and there's this whole industry that does support and promote the nourishment of natural hair, and it kind of is coming out in pop culture in ways where lots of celebrities are, wearing their hair natural. Just the other day, I think Michelle Obama wore her hair natural at Essence Festival, probably for the first time that I've seen on TV or on kind of a big platform. What do the implications of this, do you think, have, or hopefully have, for the future?
Oh, well, yes, seeing Michelle Obama rock her natural hair is is a beautiful thing. I think once again we see social media, we see the power of media, right, to show Black women and other people that Black hair is beautiful, that it's dynamic, that it's diverse, as dynamic and diverse as the women who rock it, right? I think the more we see Black women revealing their beautiful kinks and coils, however tight or loose, the more people are going to see that it's natural, that it's beautiful, that it's professional, that there's nothing eccentric or different or odd about it. It's very normal, and I think everyone is going to benefit from it.
Chante Griffin, it has been so much fun chatting with you. Thank you for all of your insights and for doing the work that you do. Chante is a writer living in LA. Her work centres the intersections of race, faith and culture. She's written for Ebony, The Root, The Washington Post, Faithfully Magazine, and she's a 2019 ARC Emerging Leader Fellow. She's also just written a piece on Daily JSTOR titled How Natural Black Hair at Work Became a Civil Rights Issue. It talks about all of the things we just had a chat about and more. You can check it out online. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.